So again, you have this filtering here, and I can see that on my Design tab, the filter button is one way that I can toggle these filters on and off. So I can click that, take them off, or put them back on. And one of the nice things about this is that I can just really quickly take a look at if I want to filter some of this data down. Say I just want to see Duet Designs and what their revenue was. It's very easy to do. You can see that it's filtered right here. And if I click on that, a couple of different ways. I can clear that from here by clicking on Clear Filter, or I can come down to Select All and choose that, and then that will also remove that filter, and you can see that there by how the icon for it changes. So again, you can do multiple ones. So let's say I just wanted to see January, and then I just wanted to see Duet Designs. It's very easy for me to filter out that data very quickly. So again, I'm just going to go back in and just clear those and take a look at all of my data. Another option that you have here that you may find interesting is the total row. So that is actually a row that gets added on to the bottom of your table that will give you a total. And bonus with that is that you also have a drop-down right next to that cell where you can choose other functions. So if you wanted to see what's the average revenue, maybe I wanted to see what's the highest revenue or what's the lowest. So there are some other nice options there, and you can indeed add additional ones if you want to. This is just a suggested list of the most popular ones. So I'm switching that back to summary. So that's a really nice feature that you have in a table. Another thing that is great about a table is that you can add data onto this. And unlike a named range where you'd have to manually go back and adjust that named range and add those rows or columns that you've added to the named range, a table will do it for you automatically. So if I wanted to add another one here, you can see that it immediately expands this line down around so that I know that this is included in my data in my table. And the nice thing about that is that when you're working with pivot tables, you always want to make sure that your data that you're looking at is up to date. And this allows it to be updated very quickly. So you can just quickly add in some data to your table, update your pivot table, and you're done within seconds. So just going to do a little undo there. So we're back to our table that we had here. And so let's actually go into creating a pivot table. And I'm going to start that by creating a table here, the way that I do that with this data. And by the way, I said there may be cases where you wouldn't do it. And one of the ones I can think of is if you are sharing an Excel workbook, you're not able to share it and have tables. So that would be a case where you would want to just use like a named range or just a list like this. But if you can, great. Let's format this as a table. So I just have my active cell in here somewhere in the list. And then I come over on the Home tab. I'm coming over to Format as a Table, and I can select any of these options here. I am just going to go ahead and click this medium blue one. And you can see it puts a marquee around where it thinks that data is. And yes, it has included it all. And yes, my table has headers, so I'm going to say OK there. And you can see that now it's formatted as a table. And when I click in it, I get that Design tab, so I know that it's a table. And I can actually change the name of the table here. So if I wanted to call it Revenue or something like that, I could certainly type that in here and save it. And this field is what the pivot table is going to reference when we actually create that. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to just have my active cell in my table, and I'm going to go up to the Insert tab. And from there, I'm going to choose Pivot Table. And you can see, again, it's selecting that table area, and there's my table name. And it's selecting it correctly. Looks good. Couple of options that I have here. I can create it on a new worksheet, which is usually what I like to do. The other thing that you can do is put it on an existing worksheet, and there may be cases where you want to do that. If I select existing worksheet, I can select then the location, and I'm just going to move this a little bit out of the way. And let's say this is where I wanted to place it. I can click on that. It's going to put that location in there, and then I would say OK. For my case, I'm going to go ahead and put it on a new worksheet. So I'm going to say OK here. And this is going to add a worksheet down to the bottom. I'm just going to double-click on this and call it Pivot 2, just to kind of keep me straight about which one I'm looking at. So I know that Pivot 2 is based on the Data 1, or I'm sorry, Data 2. You can see why I have to label these, right? So as you're looking at the table fields now, really easy. I mean, you get this blank pivot table, but that's okay because now you can create this pivot table the way that you want to see the data. So let's kind of duplicate what was in the other one and take company and drag it down into columns. And then I'm going to, well, let's look at it by month because that's how the other one was. So I'm going to put that in rows. And then I'm going to take the revenue, which is the data part, and I'm going to put that under values. And now I can see these values of revenue are in here, and this looks very similar to the other one that we had. And the great thing about this is that it was very quick. So you can see, you know, in this case, maybe manually you could do it somewhat, but in the case where you have, you know, hundreds or perhaps thousands of rows of data, this is going to really make that process of summarizing it much faster. And not only that, but you can also move this around. So if I wanted to see it by, let's say I wanted the columns to be the month and the rows to be the company, I can switch that very quickly. If I want to just see the columns as, let's just look at years, I can do that, or perhaps years and quarters. So I can drag and drop these around to get the different totals that I want and the different data that I want. So in this case, I'm looking at 14 and 15. It's broken up by quarter, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here I have my subtotals. I can actually, and you might be able to see these little expand. Hopefully you can. I might have to zoom that in a little bit. Go ahead and bring that in. So you can see that I have these expand and collapse buttons here, and those work just like when you're doing an outline or a grouping, because that's actually what it's doing, is grouping these. And I can collapse those or expand them depending on what I want to see there. And perhaps, you know, when you're in a meeting and you're showing this information, they don't really want to see all of the detail for 2014. They just want to see the detail for the latest year and then maybe compare that 2015 total to the 2014 total. So very easy to be able to do that. All right. There are some other ways that we can, I mean, of course there are tons of things that we can do here in being able to spin this data. But before we get into that, I want to show you a little bit about how you can connect to external, because what we've done in the last couple here is actually connected to data that is already in our workbook. But you're not limited by that. You can also connect to external data sources. So if I come up here to Insert, and I'm going to select Pivot Table again, and this time I'm going to connect to a different Excel workbook that I have that has the data in it, the source data that I'm looking for. So here, instead of selecting a table or range, I'm going to choose External Data Source and then click on Choose Connection. And you can see that I've had a connection before, but the one I want isn't there. So I'm going to click down on Browse for More, and that's going to send me out where I can kind of look for that spreadsheet or that workbook that I'm looking for, which is, in my case, Inventory List 1. I'm going to select that and say Open, And now, because it has a couple of different tables, a couple of different sheets in there, it's going to ask me, hey, which one do you want? And this is correct. I want the inventory list. And I know, because I've looked at it before, it does have column headers, so this is good. And I'm going to say OK here. So now it actually connects to that and puts the sheet name in there. And now again, I have an option. Do I want to put it on an existing sheet or on a new sheet? And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and put it here, and I'm going to say OK. And again, I get that pivot table where I can now go ahead and create however I want it laid out. So let's say I want, I'm going to put the months. It's kind of long. I'll leave it for now. The name,